Contrary to long-standing assumptions, the origins of the Catholic Church may not be what is commonly believed. The popular narrative suggests a foundation by a man named Peter, the apostle of Jesus. However, an examination of historical records reveals a more complex and potentially contradictory account. This discovery has the potential to profoundly impact not only one's understanding of religion, but also of history itself. The question that arises is who truly designated Peter as the leader of the Church? Was this decision made directly by Jesus, or did it originate from another source? The origins of the Catholic Church are not as simple as a one-time decision by a man named Peter, the apostle of Jesus. The historical narrative is more complex, with multiple layers and contradictions. The decision to make Peter the leader of the Church is not as straightforward as it may seem. Imagine a group of men, scattered and persecuted, meeting in secret and laying the foundations of one of the most powerful institutions in the world. It is unlikely that such a moment or person would emerge and create such an institution. The Catholic Church, with its current following of over 1 billion, began amid oppression and chaos. Rome was a hotbed of political activity, and the Church's beginnings were not without controversy. It is important to consider the possibility that the formation of the Catholic Church, an institution with over 1 billion followers, did not occur spontaneously. Rather, it was the result of a series of decisions made over several decades, even centuries, by individuals who faced significant challenges in their personal and religious lives. The early meetings of the group, which were clandestine and often marked by conflict and debate, are a testament to the determination and resilience of the followers. The decisions made during these meetings, including the establishment of doctrines that challenge the original teachings of Christ, demonstrate a need for strategic thinking and the ability to navigate complex situations. The role of the Apostle Peter, often referred to as the first pope, in the development of the Catholic Church is significant. However, it is important to question whether he was the sole figure responsible for this development. The history of the Catholic Church shows that it emerged from a period of oppression and chaos in Rome, where the worship of pagan gods was common and persecution was a constant threat. The followers of Christ faced significant challenges in their personal and religious lives, and their ability to persevere and transform their marginalized group into the official religion of the Roman Empire was not a result of luck or a miracle, but rather the result of a carefully woven strategy. It is important to recognize that the Catholic Church did not emerge overnight, nor was it a spontaneous event. The question of how the Catholic Church came to be the official religion of the Roman Empire is not one that can be answered with a simple, "It just happened." Rather, it is the result of decades, even centuries, of human decisions. From its early clandestine meetings to the councils that defined its doctrines, each step was marked by conflicts, debates, and sometimes decisions that challenged the original teachings of Christ. One must ask, what motivated these men? Was it faith, power, or a mixture of both? To answer this question, one must explore the history of the Church. The Apostle Peter, known as the first pope, played a central role. But did he really? The question of whether the Catholic Church was established by divine mandate, or through the collective decisions of its adherents is a complex one. It is important to consider the historical context, beginning with the early clandestine meetings that laid the foundation for the doctrine of the Church. These early councils were marked by conflicts, debates, and sometimes controversial decisions that challenged the original teachings of Christ. The motivations of the early leaders, such as the Apostle Peter, who is often referred to as the first pope, are a central question in this study. The Scriptures, particularly the passage, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church," attributed to Jesus, provide a basis for this inquiry. However, it is crucial to explore the nuances of Jesus' words and the historical context to gain a more nuanced understanding of the origins of the Church. The term, church, has been interpreted in various ways, leading to divisions over the centuries. Notably, the Bible itself does not explicitly mention a Catholic Church, which adds an additional layer of complexity to the discussion. The establishment of a church by Peter is a significant aspect of Christianity's historical and theological development. According to the Scriptures, Jesus declared Peter to be the foundation of his church, prompting the question of whether Peter's role as its founder is solely determined by this act of affirmation. The term, church, has been interpreted in various ways, leading to the formation of different denominations and the subsequent division among Christians. Notably, the term, Catholic, did not appear until years after the deaths of the apostles, and it was Ignatius of Antioch who first used the term in the early 107th year after Christ to describe the Christian community. This raises the question of who decided the Church should be called Catholic, and why. To understand this decision, it is crucial to examine the early years of Christianity, which were led by individuals considered outcasts, including fishermen and tax collectors. The term, Catholic, first emerged in the early centuries of Christianity, particularly in the writings of Ignatius of Antioch around the year 107 CE. This term was used to describe the Christian community, a term that the original apostles did not use. The question, therefore, is who decided that the Church should be called Catholic, and why? To understand the answer to this question, one must examine the early years of Christianity. Imagine a revolutionary movement led by marginalized individuals, such as fishermen, tax collectors, and outcasts, trying to spread a message that went against the cultural and religious norms of the time. The persecution was brutal. Christians were executed in Roman arenas, deemed heretics, and enemies of the state. How, then, did this marginalized group go from being hunted to gaining the favor of emperors? This is where Constantine the Great comes into play. Constantine's conversion to Christianity in the 4th century was a turning point. However, it is important to note that it was not purely an act of faith. Constantine was a strategist who recognized the potential of religion to unify a fractured empire. In the year 313 after Christ, he issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity and ended the persecutions. However, his interest in religion was not entirely altruistic. It is possible that he used Christianity as a political tool to consolidate his power. The foundation of the Catholic Church as we know it today began to take shape at the Council of Nicaea in the year 325. In this setting, Christian leaders convened under Constantine's oversight to deliberate on foundational issues. Among these was the question of whether Jesus was entirely divine, entirely human, or a combination of both. The conclusions of these deliberations not only shaped Christian theology but also established the foundations for an institution that would exert a profound influence on politics, culture, and spirituality for centuries to come. However, it is important to recognize that this process was neither straightforward nor orderly. Betrayals, internal disputes, and violence were not uncommon. Disagreements with the decisions made at these councils often led to persecution by fellow Christians. It is a striking testament to the complexity of the process of religious institutionalization that the very followers of Christ who had previously been persecuted by the Romans would now persecute one another. This underscores the notion that the establishment of the Catholic Church was not merely a matter of faith, but rather a multifaceted and contentious endeavor. The history of the Catholic Church is marked by significant events, including instances of betrayal, internal disputes, and even violence. It is noteworthy that many Christians who disagreed with the decisions made at these councils were persecuted by their own brethren. This phenomenon illustrates that the establishment of the Catholic Church was not solely driven by faith but also by power and control. This raises a pertinent question: to what extent do the current Catholic teachings align with the original teachings of Jesus, and to what extent have they been influenced by political and human decisions over the centuries? This is not a critique but an invitation to reflect. Have you ever pondered the reasons behind certain doctrines or the inclusion of specific books in the Catholic canon? The answers to these questions may defy our preconceived notions. This narrative is far from over, and the subsequent sections delve even deeper into the enigmatic and tumultuous early centuries of Christianity. Are you prepared to continue this journey and uncover truths that are seemingly obvious? Were you aware that some pivotal the question of which early Christian texts were included in the Bible and which were excluded is of particular interest? It is surprising that many people are unaware of the fact that, prior to the compilation of the Bible as we know it today, there were dozens of Gospels, letters, and accounts competing to define the Christian faith. It is even more surprising to consider that Christian leaders from different parts of the Roman Empire, each with their own ideas and traditions, gathered to decide which writings would be considered. The Word of God would be considered and which would be disregarded or even condemned. Who were these individuals, and what criteria did they employ to make such consequential decisions? The answer is multifaceted, incorporating political and theological elements that are both surprising and unexpected. The process that occurred in the early centuries of Christianity was not a straightforward selection based on spirituality. Instead, it was an ideological struggle that determined which version of the Christian faith would be embraced. Of the faith would prevail. It is noteworthy that there existed Christians who adhered to a distinct conception of God from the contemporary understanding. Groups such as the Gnostics, for instance, embraced a radically divergent approach to faith. They espoused the notion that access to esoteric knowledge, rather than unquestioning belief, was the pivotal factor for establishing a connection with the divine. Some even perceived the God of the Old Testament as a tyrannical figure, contrasting with the perception of an inferior deity. The prevailing notion of the divine in Christianity underwent significant changes during the early years of the religion. A diverse array of theological perspectives emerged, challenging the established views of the time. One notable example is the figure of Peter, who is traditionally recognized as the first pope. However, historical analysis reveals a different interpretation of his role and the nature of his teachings. A group known as the Gnostics held a distinct set of beliefs concerning the divine. Their approach to faith was characterized by the pursuit of secret knowledge rather than blind faith, which they believed was essential for attaining spiritual connection. These beliefs also contrast with the concept of a tyrannical God depicted in the Old Testament, contrasting it with the more compassionate figure portrayed by Jesus. The historical implications of these alternative spiritual movements are significant. It is estimated that if these ideas had prevailed, it would have profoundly impacted the development of Christianity, as we know it today. In response to these alternative expressions of faith, the Council of Nicaea was convened. Its primary objective was not only to define the identity of Jesus but also to silence these dissenting voices. As a result, numerous texts deemed heretical were deliberately destroyed, and many others remained concealed for centuries. A notable example is the Gnostic Gospels, which were discovered in Nag Hammadi in 1945. These texts present a divergent perspective on the early years of Christianity, highlighting a milieu characterized by intellectual diversity rather than uniformity. The central question guiding this discussion is, what factors contributed to the erosion of this intellectual diversity? Moreover, what implications does this loss of diversity hold for the contemporary understanding of religious belief? The subsequent discourse will delve into the figure of Peter and his alleged primacy within the ecclesiastical hierarchy. Catholic tradition asserts that Peter was the first pontiff. These texts present a divergent perspective on the nascent years of Christianity, highlighting a milieu characterized by intellectual diversity rather than uniformity. A crucial inquiry pertains to the factors that led to the erosion of this intellectual diversity. Moreover, the ramifications of this historical shift for the contemporary understanding of the faith are of particular interest. A seminal figure in this discourse is Peter, the alleged primate of the early Christian Church. Catholic tradition asserts that Peter was the first pope, yet historical evidence is considerably more ambiguous. In the Book of Acts, Peter plays a pivotal role. However, he is never depicted as the sole leader. In fact, during the Council of Jerusalem, a pivotal event in the early Christian era, James, the brother of Jesus, appears to have held a more prominent position. The question, therefore, is the provenance of the notion that Peter was the rock upon which the Church was founded. This notion is the result of a confluence of theological interpretation and institutional construction. It is intriguing to consider that the role of Rome as the center of Christianity may have been influenced by Roman imperial politics. The question of whether Rome or Jerusalem was the center of Christianity during Jesus' life and death remains a subject of historical and theological debate. Theological interpretation and institutional construction are pertinent here. One may inquire whether a particular pillar of the Church is founded more on tradition than on direct historical evidence. An additional intriguing aspect is the role of Rome. the question arises as to why Rome became the center of Christianity when Jesus lived and died in Jerusalem. The answer is deeply rooted in Roman imperial politics. Rome was not only the empire's capital but also a symbol of universal power. By establishing its base there, the Catholic Church sought not only spiritual authority but also political legitimacy. This explains why the early popes worked hard to consolidate their power in the city and extend their influence to other regions. However, it was not a smooth path. The development of the Catholic Church was filled with internal strife. The development of the Catholic Church was characterized by significant internal conflicts, as evidenced by the occurrence of multiple popes claiming the papal throne simultaneously. These events, known as the Western Schism or the Three Popes Crisis, underscore the human element within the institution, despite its divine aspirations. It is pertinent to examine how the Church managed to navigate these power struggles with the doctrine of humility. Conflicts. It is important to note that there were instances in which up to 3 individuals concurrently asserted their right to the papal throne. These events, known as the Western Schism or the Three Popes Crisis, serve as a poignant reminder that the Church, despite its divine aspirations, is comprised of fallible human beings with their own ambitions and vulnerabilities. How did these individuals navigate the tension between these power struggles and the message of humility and service espoused by Jesus? This is a question that continues to spark debate in contemporary times. Finally, it is crucial to consider the impact of Constantine's conversion to Christianity. Although he officially adopted the faith, he continued to adhere to pagan practices until his demise. He was even baptized on his deathbed, a decision that has led many to question whether his conversion was genuine or merely a political maneuver. What are your thoughts on this matter? What is your perspective on this matter? Do you believe that a strategist like Constantine would adopt Christianity purely out of faith, or do you think he used it as a tool to unify a divided empire? It is evident that, thanks to Constantine, Christianity transitioned from being a persecuted faith to a favored religion, a shift that permanently altered the course of history. Now let us return to a pivotal question: who truly created the Catholic Church? While it is imperative to consider the role of various factors in the development of the Catholic Church. While the contributions of Peter and the apostles are undeniable, it was the councils, emperors, and leaders of subsequent generations who significantly influenced its shaping. This process was characterized by arduous decision-making, political compromises, and internal strife. However, this does not diminish the Church's profound impact. Despite its inherent flaws and contradictions, the Catholic Church has exerted a profound influence on the history, culture, and spirituality of billions of individuals. In conclusion, it is essential to reflect on the Church's historical and cultural significance. The Catholic Church, in its present form, is not merely the result of a single moment or individual, rather, it is the outcome of centuries of evolution, struggle, and faith. This underscores the notion that even the most prominent and influential institutions have their origins in the aspirations, uncertainties, and choices of ordinary individuals. In light of this understanding, it is pertinent to inquire: does the Church now appear more divine, more human, or a perfect blend of both? Thank you for your attention.